Hi everyone, I'm Maggie McGrath, editor of ForbesWomen. Joining us now at Nasdaq MarketSite is Gina Drosos. She is the CEO of Signet, a jewelry brand that has a $4 billion market cap, and you might know it better for its portfolio companies, including Jared and Zales and Kay and so much more. Gina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you became CEO of this company in 2017, and you were tasked with a pretty significant turnaround. There were sexual harassment allegations against some folks in the former life of the company. The stock price was trading close to $17. It has now more than tripled, more than quadrupled. Talk to me about what it took to come in and take on this role.
Well, it's interesting. I had been on the board of directors for a few years, and so I had really grown to care a lot about the company and about the people at the company. We did find ourselves at a moment in time when we had a lot of transformation that needed to happen. But what I knew was that there was a lot of passion and excellence in the team, and we just needed to unleash that. So I was fortunate to be selected to come in as CEO and begin a transformation process that, of course, in a retail company never ends, but we have had some really great milestones along the way.
Well, I imagine as you come into a company like this, there's a lot to untangle. You have Kay, Zales, and Jared, and each of those has different consumers. You have the corporate culture. Where did you start when you came in?
It was really threefold, and the first thing I started with was listening. I did a listening tour. I spent time working in the stores. I asked the team to make me a key holder so that I could serve our customers directly. I spent time in our support center. I visited every one of our different locations, from Botswana to Israel to Dallas to Akron. I mean, really around the world, just to get the ideas of people on our team. And what came together was that people knew we needed to transform. So there was a lot of excitement around change, which doesn't always happen. Sometimes that's the biggest barrier, but in this case, people wanted to change. And it became very clear that it needed to be a strategic, financial, and cultural transformation. So we put strategies in place against all of those.
Strategic, financial, and cultural. Let's attack each of those step by step. So strategic. I've heard you say before that the brands needed to better differentiate themselves. How did you do that? Because I do admit, as a consumer who grew up in the suburbs, going to the mall, as a kid, I wasn't buying diamonds, but I think I looked at Zales and Kay and Jared as kind of similar. How do you differentiate them?
You were absolutely right. They were quite similar. In fact, they competed with each other more than they differentiated. And we had a big opportunity to better understand the entire jewelry landscape and think about how we would compete. So at the time, we had about a 6% market share. And we said, what percentage of jewelry customers could we serve if we made our brands quite different? Well, today we can serve 80% of jewelry customers across all of our different banners. We've acquired a few, we've differentiated the others, and that gives us room to grow our market share, which we have done.
You've grown it to 10%, so that's a 4% increase in an industry where I imagine it's pretty hard to grow market share.
It is, and great credit to the team for really bringing those strategies to life. Another great one was digital was really not present in the jewelry category. So 2017, this is a time when a lot of retail was moving to e-commerce. We had 5% of our sales in e-commerce, and the jewelry category wasn't much more advanced than that. We've made investments in digital. We have very interesting online tools now. You can try on jewelry online. You can upload pictures of jewelry that you like, and we'll either match that or show you others. We now have more than 20% of our sales in e-commerce, and that's been one of the ways that we've transformed our customer base. Our customer base is now significantly younger than it was 5 years ago, and we've done that through really the investments we've made in digital. So it's been great for our stores because every jewelry consultant can access our inventory across the country. It's been great for consumers because we know that 75% of the time they go online to browse before they come to the store, and just great, I think, for the customer base that we've been able to attract.
How much did the pandemic accelerate that? Because obviously we were home for so long and online shopping more than we were in 2019. Do you think you are where you are with digital in part because of the pandemic, or was it entirely strategic?
Yes, but thankfully we had made the right investments going into the pandemic. Otherwise, we couldn't have accelerated the way that we did during the pandemic. We already had tablets in the hands of every jewelry consultant for a year before the pandemic hit, so they were very well versed in how to handle it. You can imagine what once the pandemic hit, it was important to people to celebrate those few special people they were quarantining with. We could do that from our tablets. So we turned every jewelry consultant and store manager into a virtual jewelry consultant and did that online.
Now let's go to the other bucket that you indicated, financial. I have heard you say that it was important to get small to get big. Talk to me about closing stores and exactly how you went small to get big.
Right. I think a lot of times it's hard for, that's an easy phrase to say, get small to get big, but it's really hard to decide to do that because, in the case of closing stores, every store still has some amount of sales. So you're deciding to cancel that amount of sales, but oftentimes they're not profitable sales, or you're spending more time and effort on the fringes and not enough time on the core business. So actually in my tenure, we've closed over 1,000 stores, which on a store base now of 2,800 is a big number. But by getting smaller to get bigger, our sales per square foot is now up substantially. Our sales per jewelry consultant, which is great for their financial well-being and ability to serve customers, is up substantially. So it really was the right strategy, even though it's hard to make that decision in the beginning.
Another piece, and I don't know if this goes to strategy or financial, is the lab-grown gem industry has surged in recent years. There are some statistics that show that it's 50% of some markets or some companies' revenue. It depends on the company, right? But younger consumers are looking for a lower entry point for diamonds and gems, and potentially a more sustainable entry point to buy fancy jewelry. How much has the lab-grown piece of the jewelry business affected your business?
It's a business that we decided quite early on to participate in. We're very customer-led, and we were seeing a lot of the same data that you're saying. We were seeing that younger customers were interested, that it could offer a nice value price point. Lab-created diamonds aren't rare. They didn't form over 1 billion years in the earth, so they're different, but at the same time, they offer an alternative for someone who's looking for value. So we became part of that industry early on, and I think as a result, we've been a very trusted jeweler in that way. I mean, we provide quite high quality and natural diamonds, as well as lab-created diamonds, and I think there are customers for both of those.
Now, you're wearing some diamonds right now. Where do these come from?
Well, I'm more of a natural diamond person myself, so I did choose that for my engagement ring for sure, and certainly for a big signature piece like this. But the ring I'm wearing is lab created, and one of the 2 bracelets I'm wearing is lab created.
And are they Kay or Zales or Jared or?
Well, I try to represent all of us, we're all in this together. So actually Zales is here, James Allen and Blue Nile is here, Jared is over here, so Kay as well. So
is your jewelry box at home labeled? So you get it straight?
No, I remember actually. I remember the different pieces that I get at different places, and they're, as I was saying, they're much more well differentiated now. So I think, it makes sense to me which one comes from which banner.
As we talk about consumer trends, I mentioned lab grown. I saw a report that indicated sustainability is top of mind for a lot of consumers. What are you seeing among Signet's customers and the trends where we are right now in 2024?
I would take that sustainability and make it a little bit bigger too, and say customers are counting on companies to show responsibility. So corporate social responsibility, I think, is important. That includes diversity, which has been very important at Signet. I think that always starts from the top. When I came onto the Signet board, I was only the 2nd woman ever to serve on the board, and now we have the most diverse board in the history of the company, and probably in all of retail. I mean, significantly diverse. We have the same on my leadership team and throughout our ranks. So I think that's an example of what customers care about in that whole corporate social responsibility area. Sustainability is also important. We're part of UN Sustainable Development Goals. and have a number of those goals out to 2050. But probably the most remarkable aspect of our leadership in that case is responsible sourcing of gemstones. I can tell my 20-something children, which is, my real torture test, I can tell them that everything that we sell is responsibly sourced, and I stand behind it as really, being able to stand for the love it's meant to represent, and that's very important.
As you talk about the culture, the leadership team, that does get to that third bucket that you mentioned, and I think 65% of your leadership team is female?
Exactly.
And you are the first female CEO to hold this position at this company, is that correct?
It is true, although I will tell you we have a great history. Back in the 1860s, there was a woman named Harriet Samuel, and we still have this banner today called H. Samuel in the UK. She took over her father-in-law's failing watch business and turned it into the #1 jewelry store chain in the UK.
Interesting.
So we do have a long history of women leaders, but certainly in the modern era.
Well, the gender dynamics in jewelry are really interesting to me. The fact that you are the first is, of course, remarkable, but so many women wear jewelry, and yet I think there's been a stigma to buy it. It's like you wait for a family member or a potential spouse to buy a big piece for you. What are you seeing in terms of consumer behavior, and are more women buying jewelry for themselves, or is it the bridal moments, the engagement moments that are still the big jewelry moments in a consumer's life?
It's a fantastic trend now. We are definitely seeing more women buying jewelry for themselves, which I think is fantastic. It's to celebrate, a promotion, or, they buy something for my sister or my sister-in-law kind of a thing. But I just, or just because I buy myself some great earrings because I think it would look good with the jacket I just got. We're seeing a lot more of that than we ever did before. And I think that's enabled also by the innovation that we've been bringing. We knew this was going to be a year with a reasonably tough macro backdrop, a lot of uncertainty, and so we've really leaned into newness as an example. And because of the scale of our company, we can source fantastic product, often at a lower price point than many of our competitors. And so we've used that value scale to bring a lot more newness. Our newness is up to 25% of our total sales, which is a really high number. It's up 800 basis points versus last year in the second quarter.
So when you say newness, what does that mean? Is that a specific product, or is that, how does that manifest on the consumer experience?
Newness is any product that was introduced within the last 12 months. Okay. So even a classic piece like diamond stud earrings, we might change the basket setting to make it a little bit, higher profile or lower profile, or change the clasp to make it, a little bit tighter or fit better. Any of those things on core jewelry or on brand new jewelry would be considered newness. So another example would be sculpted gold pieces. Gold is through the roof on its cost right now, but customers still really love a big gold look. We've worked with our Italian factories to create something called sculpted gold, which is more of a hollow gold. So think about like a chain link that maybe started almost like a straw, where you put the gold around the outside and then it's hollow in the inside. You can get a really big look, but it's not so heavy and it's not as costly. So these are the kinds of things that a company like ours can bring. It's a great innovation for self-purchase.
Oh, that is so interesting. As you talk about innovation, I'm thinking about your background. You had a stint as an entrepreneur, and you also worked at Procter & Gamble for over 2 decades. Can you talk about how this background taught you things about business and what you take from it to Signet?
Sure. I think the most important thing is to really understand consumer needs and desires. So in the example I just gave you, big gold looks are important, but because gold is so expensive, they can become unaffordable unless we can innovate to find a way to meet that need. That's exactly what we did at P&G Beauty. I started working in the beauty business when it was quite small at P&G. I was part of a team that grew it to be the #1 beauty company in the world, and we did it by really understanding what did consumers want in their skincare, their mascara, their hair care products, hair color. All of these are businesses that I worked on and really enjoyed.
And what about your time as an entrepreneur? Did you enjoy that? And do you see yourself as an entrepreneur even though you are a CEO for a corporation?
It's so funny that you say that. You know, the reason why I went to become an entrepreneur is because I had been part of growing a beauty company inside the world's largest soap and diaper company. And so to me, that felt quite entrepreneurial. I mean, we were doing things differently. We were bringing some different skill sets or mindsets, into the company. I remember when, I went to go visit an Amazon distribution center very early on, thinking about what would the internet mean, to our products. We took Secret to be the first brand at P&G that was purely marketed through digital media. So we were innovators in a lot of ways within P&G, and also benefited a lot from the core strengths of the company. But I thought, I was kind of entrepreneurial. And then I looked in the mirror one day and I thought, are you really? Does that go together? And so I went and I ran a startup company in a science kind of field, in life sciences, and I'm definitely not a scientist. But I could understand the consumer need, I could understand the technology. I surrounded myself with really bright people who helped, and we grew that company 12 times to help more mental health patients get on the right medicine. So it was exciting.
And it was that growth. You were a board member for Signet, and then they said, hey, we like what you did at the startup, so come here.
Yeah, and your background at P&G, and I had a great track record always of building diverse teams. And for me, that's because it's a business strategy. I think if you want to be an innovator, then you have to surround yourself with a group of people who see 360 degrees. I mean, I can never see my own blind spots, so I can't always see, young upstart competition coming unless I have a team that's really seeing more holistically. So I think if you want to be an innovative company, if you want to see around the corner, you have to build diverse teams, and that's been a hallmark of my track record.
Speaking of young upstart companies, how much pressure do you feel from startup founders, from young women who are founding jewelry companies, to chase after the same demographics you're chasing after?
I think that is always the group to be the most paranoid about. I mean, great ideas come when you are unencumbered with process, when you don't have to do things the way that they were done before. That's the kind of spirit that we try to create at Signet, and our employee engagement scores would say that we've done a good job of creating an innovative company, that people feel like they can be themselves, they feel proud to work at the company, they feel like they understand their role in the strategy. But I think smaller companies tend to be able to grab onto ideas and move quicker. Mm-hmm. So it's super important as a big company to be humble and not think that we're number one, therefore we must know everything. I think it's quite the opposite.
We're speaking in September, so still a few months left in 2024. What are the biggest consumer trends that you are watching in jewelry right now?
Mm-hmm. I mentioned yellow gold. It's very hot right now despite the high price points. In fact, maybe because of. I think people know that it is something that holds its value. So the sculpted gold, the hollow gold, I think will be very big. Lab created in fashion definitely will be big. We're also seeing a return to engagements. It's interesting. I mean, COVID happened in 2020, so now we think, that's long gone. But for the jewelry industry, it's actually just ending. It's about 3 years between when a couple meets and when they get engaged. So our COVID was really in 2023 and ended the first part of 24. But now that's ending, and we're seeing engagements come back. So I think natural diamond engagement rings are going to be really hot this holiday season. So
interesting. So there really was a decline in 2023.
Oh yeah, there were 25% fewer couples who got engaged last year versus a typical pre-COVID year. And it was down 12% the year before that, and now is coming back.
And now it's coming back.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to let you go soon, but before you go, I have to ask, because you joined our 50 over 50 list this year. You were one of the people listed, which is a list that honors women who are stepping into their most important, impactful professional roles after the age of 50. So I'm wondering, Gina, did you ever imagine your career over the age of 50 when you were 20 or 30?
No, I never could have imagined it. But what I'm most excited about is the wisdom to mentor the next generation. I mean, there are so many. You talk about entrepreneurs. I see it in my company. I just think that women leaders, all of our leaders have so much potential, and so I love the opportunity to do that. And I'll tell you, of any honor I've ever gotten, that's the one my kids were the most excited about.
Really?
So yeah, thank you. I was right next to Celine Dion. They were like, wow, Mom.
We do rate the bios alphabetically. We don't like to do a ranking, right? Because how do you compare a singer to a CEO? We try to have sector diversity. But talk about mentoring the next generation. If you could go back and give your 20-something self advice, knowing what you know now as a CEO, as someone with great corporate and entrepreneurial experience, what would you tell young Gina?
I would say acquire experiences. I mean, don't make your career path so linear that you're worried about when's my next promotion or I don't want to move off track. I think that today's leaders really need to be able to ask questions in a lot of different areas. You know, I would have said to young Gina, don't just, be a brand manager in marketing, go work in finance, go work in supply chain, go, like I ultimately ended up doing, work for a big company, work for an entrepreneurial company, see the difference, understand a resource-rich environment versus we have to have the cash to make payroll on Friday kind of an environment. I think that really gives leaders a more well-rounded point of view.
Gina Drosos, thank you so much for joining us at Nasdaq MarketSite.
Thank
we so
you.
appreciate your time.
This was great. I appreciate it.